If you're trying to build a job board but fighting the classic problem of the chicken and the egg, clients versus candidates, listen to this episode. My guest is Rudi Bauer, the exec who spent 6 years leading StepStone in Austria before joining We Are Developers in 2020. Since then, he's helped turn their dev-focused platform into Europe's largest tech community, now 1.7 million strong. Rudi's about to share the content playbook that reaches the passive 70% of developers before they even start job hunting. Let's dive in. Rudi Bauer, thank you very much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, Martin.
An absolute pleasure, So, Rudi, for the benefit of the audience, why don't you give us a brief introduction to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm 59 years old, so I'm quite long in business now. I joined different kind of industries. So I started in telecommunications industry. Honestly, I started as software developers in the late 80s. So I'm more or less now back after a lot of marketing, advertising positions and management positions. I'm now back at We Are Developers, so probably back to the roots. So I joined We Are Developers in 2020 after 7 years being the managing director and chief evangelist for one of the biggest European job boards for StepStone Group. And I was managing director for StepStone Austria and chief evangelist for StepStone Group in total. And within or during the pandemic, then I decided to leave because there was no stages for a chief evangelist. So I really decided to move on, and I joined We Are Developers back then.
Fantastic. And so what's the best thing we can probably do is if you can give us an introduction to We're Developers, let our audience know what it is, what it does, how long it's been going for, and also what you do there as well.
Yeah. I'm one of the two managers here at We Are Developers. So we are Sead and me. We are both in the board. I mean, the board consists of 4 people, but the basic idea of We Are Developers is a very pragmatic and simple one. I think the guys found out, and I mean that's the truth, that at the end of the day, there will be a time starting probably now, or there has already started a couple of years ago, where we really need to get in contact with passive candidates, and we need to stay in contact with passive candidates, because if you look on social demographic developments all over the world, there will be a kind of a shortage on labor people, so labor force. And that was the basic idea. The basic idea was that the guys from developers, when they founded the company, they said, okay, what is the right mechanics to get in contact and stay in contact? And I think that's the biggest problem of generic job boards, probably, to build up candidate loyalty, because at the end of the day, you have no candidate loyalty. You just have a kind of, if people are looking for a job, what they normally do with every 3 to 5 years, probably in Europe, then I think that they are interested in all the job boards they have in mind. If they, in all the phases in between, I think it doesn't make sense to go to a job board and upload your profile and keep it attractive. And nobody's doing that, honestly. And that was the basic idea of We Are Developers. I said, okay, could we build up a community, and what is the content that we need to produce to bond the people towards this community, to keep them in the community? And that's the basic idea of We Are Developers. So we started as a kind of a small community, and in the meantime, we are reaching out to 1.7 million developers in Europe. And the recipe for that is very simple. It's content. It's content which either informs them, inspires them, entertains them, or helps them to build their career. I mean, that's the basic ingredients. So if you watch our YouTube channel, or if you start watching a YouTube channel, I think in the meantime, it would take you 430 days, 24/7, to watch all the content that was produced during the last couple of years. Wow. And in parallel, to make it a little bit more in person, we also started in 2017. I think it was the first year where we had this kind of small developer conference and congress. In the meantime, it has become the biggest developer conference all over the world. So I think we are having it in 2 weeks from now. I think this year it's 9th to 7th of July, 9th to 11th of July, sorry, in Berlin, and we are expecting this year, we're expecting 15,000 developers. We are expecting 700 speakers on 21 stages in parallel. So it's a really big festival for developers where they can really network. They can talk to a lot of colleagues. They can get inspired by fabulous speakers. So it's the top of the pops. It's really the rock stars of the developer ecosystem is joining us on a yearly basis, and this is what we have achieved in the meantime. But the basic idea is still very simple. We bridge two worlds. We have the developers as a community which is inspired, which is entertained and informed via us and the community itself. And we have the companies which could be connected or which can connect to this community by either placing their products or looking for talents or whatever is needed.
Well, that's fantastic. What an incredible story that is for We Are Developers, and really, the focus being on community, ultimately, by the sounds of it, content and community. Excuse me. And I wanted to kind of go back to, why that decision was made. A lot of job boards, when they start up and when they're looking to grow, they're really just focused on, some standard kind of SEO style content, but ultimately they're just really rapidly trying to solve that chicken and egg problem. We need clients, we need candidates, etc., etc. Why was there that decision to really focus in heavily on content and community?
I think the tricky part is, we know from our own surveys, we're doing a big survey every year. So in the meantime, we ask around 1,500 developers. So it's really representative throughout Europe. What is important for them and what is attracting them. And I think this information is very important for companies as well, especially if you want to attract talent. And the other thing is that, honestly, we know that 1 out of 10 developers is proactively looking for a job. So 1 out of 10, and 7 out of 10 are open for new positions if you show them something which they probably haven't found in their lives. And this is very specific and individual in the meantime. So for some, it's money. For others, it's work-life balance. For next one, it's personal development. For the next one, it's probably well-being, mental health, diversity, inclusion. There's so many factors. And honestly, I think companies are not looking for this 1 out of 10 active candidate, because my personal opinion is, if a developer is proactively looking for jobs in time like this, where there's a really rush for developers, I think it's probably not the best candidate. Yeah. So you normally want to attract the other ones, the 7 out of 10, and it's very difficult to reach them with a traditional job board approach, because why should someone who has got a job or is in a job should go on a job board? This is already very late in the decision phase, because if you already know that you are probably looking for a job, that's the latest moment where you can reach people. And normally, if they step out of a door, if they're really good and talented, to step into other doors. So they've always got 3 to 4 open doors currently, and it's very difficult for companies to really attract this talent. The other way around, if you're stepping into the community, if you're showing yourself within the community, if you have time to create curiosity, it definitely makes much more sense for companies, because they step in much earlier in this whole cycle. And so they've got plenty of time to really build up a relation, to really inspire people, to talk about them, to do employer branding, to really show who they are, what they are, and how they work, and what's important for them, what they could offer as benefits. And as it becomes more and more individual, I think it needs time to really get the kind of traction on the other side. And that is the reason why we decided to take this community approach, which is definitely, from the very beginning, I think it was really difficult, because you need to build up a kind of a basic critical mass of community, because you need the community to produce the content, because nobody is is in a role that we could never produce the content ourselves because nobody knows enough. Yeah? You need all the brains, you need the power, you need this kind of community power to really create and inspiring content. And that was the tricky part. In the meantime, it's a kind of honestly, we are more or less just focusing on hosting stages. So we are building a kind of virtual events. We are always developing new formats and ideas, and then we are hosting some stages. We are inviting some great people that we have within our community in the meantime, and they are producing the content together with us. So it has become much easier. But the first phase was really tricky, I think, to really get this kind of basic traction. This was probably the hardest step.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. And actually, I want to go back to your first point around the attracting, the candidates ultimately. And I love this thought process. Actually, it just kind of sparked that thought process in me where you said, look, only 1 out of 10 developers are actually actively looking for a job, and 7 out of 10 are the passive. And it's those 7 out of 10 that, as a job board, you really want to focus on, because it's too late in the day if they're already looking for a job. And I think this is something that a lot of people don't think about, because ultimately job boards are there to list jobs, attract people who want to apply for those jobs, and not to think about those 7 out of 10 that aren't. So let's go back to that. How you mentioned about content, but is there any kind of specific experience or learnings that you have in terms of how to attract those 7 out of 10? You talk about content a lot, but ultimately, what content works and what content doesn't work to attract that passive talent?
I mean, it's at the end of the day, it really depends on the people on the other side. So I think as we really found out in 2019, the survey showed really clearly that at this time, at this point of time, money was driver number one. So it was high salary season. It was a kind of everybody wanted to work for the big brands like Zalando in Germany, and probably Google and Microsoft and all the big ones. In the meantime, this has dramatically changed. There was a lot of influencing factors. I mean, this was the layoffs in the US. It was a kind of, I think we've now reached more or less again these eye levels. So I think companies and talents are talking more on eye level again, which I really love, because I really hate this kind of arrogancy on one side. And I think for many, many years, it was the companies being arrogant. Then it was a couple of years, it was the developers becoming arrogant. And now we are back on eye level. And I think now it needs this individual approach. I think there's no one fits all approach any longer. So you really have to focus on your strengths. And I think what we normally give as a tip to our clients is, do authentic employer branding. Really talk about yourself. Put one of your developers in front of an iPhone, and let him explain how you work within your organization. Tech stack you're using, leadership approach you're using. Talk about well-being, talk about appreciation, talk about purpose, talk about all this kind of stuff, talk about inclusion, talk about all the kind of things where you as a company have the impression that you're really probably one step ahead of all the others. And then it needs some time it's a kind of a it's a kind of a mechanics which then needs some time to spread out, and then you get distraction, and then you the all the community members, they go through, they see these kind of small videos, the snippets, the content, and then they get a kind of say, okay, this is a company that sounds great. They're doing what I always wanted to do. It's my purpose. It's following my kind of personal needs. And then they click on the apply button. So it's a kind of a delayed process, but it's a very honest process, and it's a very authentic process. And what we really give a tip to all the clients is, be authentic, and don't take your employer branding video, which you normally use for corporate positions. Don't use this one. Take one of your devs, put this guy in front of an iPhone, and let them explain what to do, why you do it, and how you do it. And at the end of the day, I think this is the best medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's ridiculously authentic, and that's what people want. They want to know the people they're going to be working with, the managers they're going to be working for, and really have that immediate connection
Yeah,
to
and
something that might
I
spark
think
that.
that what's really important, that we should never forget, especially developers, to have a really well working bullshit detector. Yeah, that's
Mm.
part of their job. I mean, they are digging into everything. They are digging into the details, and they are really finding out the details. And therefore you can't cheat them. Yeah, it's very difficult to tell them something which is not true, because they really find it out immediately. And I think that's probably the big difference. But what's valid for developers is 100% valid for all the other people in the organization as well, probably with a delay. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's valid, and therefore there's no real big difference between being a developer focused community or marketing community. At the end of the day, we're talking about humans, and we are talking about human needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really important to remember as well.
Mm.
Um, and so, what is the impact of that on that 7 out of 10? So we've talked about building up a fantastic community of talent. Potentially, most of that talent isn't actively looking, but
Mm.
they're certainly interested in keeping an eye on the market.
Mm.
Um, what's the impact then? What kind of success metrics tend to come from good content, good employer branding, authentic employer branding content?
Mm.
What's the success look like?
I think the success is that you probably need more time up front to get in contact with the people. But if you convert them, or if they convert into candidates, into real candidates, you normally get the better match. So you get less candidates, but more quality.
Hmm.
Because if people already know what, and I think it also pays in massively into retention. Because I mean, I think that's one of the biggest issues that we still have in all over Europe, is that probably 3 out of 10 people leave within the first couple of weeks. Yeah, because what they have
Hmm.
seen in the employer branding videos and what they have been told in the recruiting is probably not what really is the final truth at the end of the day. And so a lot of companies, a lot of candidates leave after a couple of weeks or months within the trial period, probably. And then I think this costs a hell of a lot of money. Yeah. And we really try to set it up in a way that it's honest from the very beginning.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really important. I think you mentioned something there that really kind of got my brain whirring, which was retention.
Mhm.
I think a lot of time people don't think about that because job boards are very transactional. Ultimately, they just
Mhm.
want to get the person in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
actually, if you're delivering candidates who are engaged, nurtured,
Yeah.
and aware through authentic employer branding of what of what that really does look like on the ground at that job,
Yeah.
then you're going to be a trusted partner to deliver. You know, might not be the largest numbers, and people don't want an influx of massive numbers of applications, but
Mhm.
quality over quantity. So
Yeah.
quality applications of people who are engaged, educated through that authentic employer branding, who potentially might stay there for longer. So, more productive team members ultimately.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you also have this kind of a really good chance also to really get rid of these misunderstandings along the way, because you can really talk openly. It anyhow needs some time to get in contact with the candidates, to create the curiosity around you as a company and as an employer. And
Hmm.
so at the end of the day, I think there's a kind of a it's like in a personal relation. Yeah, if two people meet and they know for some time, and I think there's this word of mouth as well, because the community is then talking about these companies and people are exchanging ideas, and the community has a kind of a vivid life inside as well. So I think there's kind of side communication already going on, and people are talking about it, and they know someone, and they get in contact with these guys. So at the end of the day, if you step into the relation between a company and the employees, there's already a lot of trust, and there's already a lot of kind of basic groundwork which was done along the way. Because I mean, if you're just taking a job ad, and if you're applying to a job ad, I mean, it honestly, I mean, if you compare job ads, I mean, most of the job ads are exchangeable. And
Yeah.
so you can really, if you cut out 90% of the written content, yeah, nothing happens, because at the end
Yeah.
of the day, it's kind of chat gpt generated stuff anyhow. So, and what happens within our we developers world is that there's a kind of a vivid community that is already talking, and they have kind of side connections, and they know someone, and so there's a hell of a lot of side exchange of information, and that helps to get a kind of a clear picture about the current situation within a company or expectations. So the expectation management is much easier, I think.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I totally get that. I can see that. I can see that. I can see how powerful it is, for sure. And so you had this really successful methodology of delivering the content that the community wanted to see,
Hmm.
and delivering a really engaged community back to your clients.
Hmm.
So then you decided, 4 years ago, we want to create the live experience of this. We want to create the live experience of creating amazing content for our community and connecting our community into our clients. And you decided to create the annual conference. So whose idea was that? And you know, I'd love to hear more about kind of why you went for that live experience,
Yeah.
because it's a really big undertaking to organise a live event.
Yeah, I think we don't see ourselves as event organizers, and we don't. I
Mhm.
think that's the last direction where we definitely would finally go, because it's really tough business, and it's always a lot of risk, and I mean, there's so many
Yeah.
things that could happen. But what was the basic idea? The basic idea was that the guys back then, when they founded or created this kind of life experience and the World Congress, the, I think it was a kind of an internal discussion. I was not part of this discussion, but I know the stories. It was that marketing is always celebrating themselves, so that
Mhm.
probably don't even put the red carpet back somewhere to storage, because they need it quite often. It's the same for sales. There's a lot of sales incentives. They're flying around with helicopters, and they get a kind of a lot of benefits and incentives, and developers were always sent to some boring seminar hotels, yeah, in some seminar hotel rooms and seminar rooms, and flipping up the laptop and doing coding for 2 days or something like this. And then we said, okay, why don't we give them a stage to celebrate themselves as well once a year? And that was the basic idea. The basic idea was to combine the content with inspiration, with fun, with party, with a kind of networking, and that is how the World Congress was created. In the first year, they really did a really brave move, because they invited Steve Wozniak as keynote speaker. So that was really the
Wow.
brave move, because they really uh, 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 asked him to join in Vienna, and he was standing in front of 5,000 developers, and we have a statement in the files where he said, "Oh my God, I've never been in front of a larger crowd of developers."
Wow.
And he was really proud to be there. And I mean, and then I think it became a kind of a boomy thing, because I mean, Steve Wozniak was there, and the year later, I think it was Gary Kasparov, and then the year in 2022, after the pandemic, it was Sir Tim Berners-Lee. last year it was David Seamers, who was the former White House president of Barack Obama, and this is the keynote speakers that are doing the openings. And
Mm.
the main stage in the meantime has got a kind of 7,000-8,000 seats, so it's really big and it's totally full and crowded. And I think the program is amazing, and all the rock stars. So all the kind of big founders of companies and programming languages, all these guys are there because they want to give back something to the community. So I think this kind of it's the amazing thing is that it's not a question of money. It's not this kind of, okay, I'm going there, but I want to have money for it. So it's more the
Mm.
opposite, that all these great people tell us, yeah, we earned some money with that business. We had some success, and now we want to give something back to the community. And that's the amazing thing. That's the goosebump thingy, which I really love most. Because if you go there and you then see Sir Tim Berners-Lee, this guy who invented the World Wide Web with his team,
Yeah.
is sitting with two young developers on a table, and they both have a kind of a barbecue plate in front of them from the fruit tart. Yeah, and these guys are sitting next to next. Yeah, I think that's the amazing moment, and that is really the this heartly community feeling that they then get if you see that. And that's the reason why we're having this kind of a once a year lifetime in-person event, because I think this meeting the people, drinking a beer together, having fun together. And we are having drag queen karaoke every year. So there's a drag queen singing.
Brilliant.
1,000 developers are singing Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys together with drag queens, and that's really fun. I mean, it's party, but it's a lot of content as well. As mentioned, we are having this year, I think we're having 700 speakers on 21 stages, and we're expecting 15,000 people there.
That's
And I met
incredible.
two guys. I met two guys 2 years ago, and they wanted to do a selfie with me at the end of the conference. And then I asked them where did you come from, and they said from Venezuela. And
Wow.
I said, how long do you stay in Europe now? And they said, no, we are flying back tomorrow. So they just came for the conference from Venezuela to Berlin. And I mean, that shows that it's highly appreciated what we do, and that's the wonderful thing.
That's incredible. It's absolutely incredible, and it's a testament to, I suppose, the success of this content and community strategy that that We Are Developers has been really
Mhm.
focused on since the beginning. So I think that's incredible. Now we're fast running out of time, and one of the things that I like to kind of hone in on is some really good kind of actionable advice from experience. The younger businesses and
Mhm.
smaller businesses can take to help them grow, help them achieve more. Um, and one of the things that I was interested in, obviously, Rudi, you've had a significant amount of experience in the job board industry, like you said, your time at We're Developers, but also before that at StepStone as well. Um,
Mhm.
if you were mentoring a startup, job board startup, what's the
Mhm.
kind of key three things that you think that they should be focusing on in order to achieve, growth?
I think it's the first and most important thing is really try to deeply understand your target audiences on both sides. I think that's most important. I think it's not a copy paste strategy thingy. So, and honestly, what we never should forget, at the end of the day, we're talking about lifetime of humans. Yeah, job
Hmm.
means lifetime. Yeah,
Hmm.
and honestly, I'm a big fan of AI. A really big fan. I really love what's going on there. But what I don't have is this belief in there's a quick solution for solving the issue for humans. I don't believe in that. Yeah, because at the end of the day, I think you really need to deeply understand the human needs on both sides. And I think that's
Hmm.
the first tip which I could probably give to people who are stepping into the business. Really try to understand the value for humans. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it has nothing to do with making quick money. I think it's more this kind of really understanding the pain. If you understand the pain, you can find a solution. Yeah. And there's,
Love
I
that.
think the job market, and I'm in this business now for nearly 20 years, but the job market is still a broken market.
Hmm.
Yeah, honestly, it doesn't work. Yeah, so it's still kind of the same pain that we had 20 years ago is still there. And I think at the end of the day, it has to do with trust and appreciation. And trust and appreciation is very difficult to be digitalized. Yeah, and honestly, I think it's a very human thingy, and you have to really feel the pain of the other side. And if you are able to feel the pain of the other side, you're able to find a solution for that. And I never met. I mean, I changed my jobs quite often, and I ran to some of these kind of normal application processes, but
Hmm.
not too often, honestly. And but I think what you need to understand is nobody's an expert in changing jobs. I've never met a guy who could explain that he's doing it 2 times a week and he's a really expert. Yeah. So at the end of the day, we are always in a kind of a stress situation. If we are
Hmm.
changing jobs, this is stress for us. Yeah. We're jumping into the cold lake. It's a kind of a lot of uncertainties. We don't know what we see
Mm.
on the other side, what we meet on the other side. So it's a kind of we have to really trust and believe in what's shown to us. And I think that is the problem that we have to overcome. Yeah, we have to take the people at hand and we have to guide them through this process. And I think that's the probably that's the best tip for new job boards. If you're really guiding, if you're able to guide both sides through this kind of process, the company side as well as the candidate side, then you're really adding value.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that's a really good focus point. Is that technology is great, like you said. Big fan of AI, big fan of technology, but
Mm.
if you're not building trust, because like
Yeah,
you said, it's stressful for the candidate. It's a big one of life's biggest stresses,
yeah,
finding a new job.
yeah,
So if you're not building that trust there and that trust on the other side to guide employers through that process and
yeah,
that kind of almost handshake moment of bringing somebody perfect to the table, then yeah, I totally get that. But understanding, like you said, understanding both sides of the market, exceptionally important as
yeah,
well.
yeah. That is definitely
Fantastic.
what I see as the
Rudi,
most beneficial part of it.
yeah, no, I totally get that. I totally get it. Thank you so much. Rudi, for the sake of our audience, how can people find you? I know you also run a podcast as well, but yeah, how do people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about you and find out more?
I think that the easiest thing of getting in contact with me directly is either my email, which is very simple, rudy@wearedevelopers.com. That's very simple. Or on LinkedIn, it's Rudi Bauer, and you definitely, I think, one of the first names showing up there is my profile. And I'm really looking forward to get a lot of kind of contact requests, but also kind of if somebody has some questions, if somebody wants to interact with me, I'm really happy. I'm also running my own podcast from We Developers, which is called Cappuccino with HR, where we are talking about different kind of topics. So it's really kind of a very open coffee talk, cappuccino coffee talk about all the kind of raising phenomena out there. So we are taking every single thing with what we think could be important to listen to. Yeah, and then of course we have the
Fantastic.
Congress, and the Congress is taking place, as I already mentioned, from the 9th to the 11th of July in Berlin. So there's still some tickets available, and if somebody is in Berlin or is around Berlin, we are really looking forward to meet you in person there. It's great stuff, great party, and you really get this kind of spirit of the community. Let's call it like this. I mean, this is what we normally hide within the virtual world. Yeah, is then shown in really in person. I think, and I really love this. I'm always looking forward, and I still have goosebumps if I walk through. And
Uh,
yeah,
I mean, to have that every year is a great feeling. You know, it's if you're getting bored of it, you know that there's something going wrong.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
to
yeah,
still have goosebumps every time is
yeah.
fantastic. Rudy, I'll make sure that all those links are front and center for our audience to be able to find you and find out more about the Congress and We Are Developers and your podcast. But for the time being, Rudy, it's been a true and absolute pleasure having you on and having this conversation with you. Thank you so much once again, and I look forward to hopefully joining you in person one day as well.
Marty, it
Oh,
was a
thank you so
pleasure.
much.
Thank you very much for having me, and so cool to be in your show. Thanks.
Thank you. Cheers.